You've been told that there is no gravity in space, that astronauts float because gravity disappears, that beyond Earth, gravity simply stops existing. But what if that idea is completely wrong? And what if the truth is not only different, but far more counterintuitive than you expect? This belief has been repeated for decades, in movies, in documentaries, in classrooms. It feels obvious. No gravity means floating. But reality is not based on intuition. Reality is based on physics. And physics tells a completely different story. The idea seems simple. In space, there is no gravity. So astronauts float. It sounds logical, but it is completely false. The International Space Station orbits at about 400 kilometers above Earth. That is not far. In fact, on a planetary scale, it is extremely close. And gravity there is still incredibly strong, about 90% of what we feel on Earth. So gravity is still there. Strong, constant, unavoidable. So why do astronauts float? The answer is not the absence of gravity. It is motion. They are falling constantly, and that single idea changes everything. Imagine an elevator. You are inside, standing still. Gravity pulls you down. Everything feels normal. Now imagine the cable snaps. The elevator begins to fall. And suddenly, everything around you starts to float. Not because gravity disappeared, but because you and everything else are falling together. This is called free fall, and this is exactly what is happening in space. The space station is falling toward Earth, but it is also moving sideways, very fast. So instead of hitting the planet, it keeps missing it, over and over and over again. That is orbit, not floating, not zero gravity, but continuous falling. Now here is where things become even more interesting, because what you're seeing is an illusion. Your brain is trying to interpret what is happening, and it does so based on experience. On Earth, objects fall downward. There is always a clear direction, but in orbit, there is no surface pushing back, no floor, no resistance. So your brain sees objects floating and assumes gravity is gone. But that assumption is wrong. Everything is still being pulled at the same time, at the same speed. Now think about this. If you jump from a plane for a few seconds, you feel weightless. Not because gravity disappeared, but because you're falling with it. Skydivers experience this. For a brief moment, they float. But gravity is still acting on them at full strength. That same effect is happening in space, but continuously. Gravity does not turn off. It does not weaken to zero. It exists everywhere. Even in deep space, every object with mass creates gravity. The moon is held by Earth's gravity. The Earth is held by the sun. The sun is held by the galaxy. And the galaxy itself moves within a larger structure. Everything is connected. Everything is influenced. Everything is moving because of gravity. Space is not empty of force. It is filled with invisible interactions. What we call zero gravity is actually microgravity. A condition where gravitational forces are still present, but their effects are balanced by motion. Everything is falling at the same rate, so nothing pushes against anything. And without that push, there is no weight. But no weight does not mean no gravity. Now consider something else. What would happen if gravity truly disappeared? Not reduced, not balanced, gone. Completely. Planets would stop orbiting. Moons would drift away. Atmospheres would escape. Objects would move in straight lines, forever. Nothing would hold together. Stars would collapse differently. Galaxies would dissolve. The structure of the universe would change. But that is not what we observe. Everything remains in motion, in balance, in orbit, because gravity is still there. Now let's bring this closer to the human body. In space, astronauts experience physical changes. Muscles weaken, bones lose density, the body adapts. But not because gravity is gone, because resistance is gone. On Earth, your body constantly works against gravity. Every step, every movement, every posture. In space, that resistance disappears, so the body no longer needs to work as hard. And it begins to change. This reveals something important. Gravity is not just a force. It is something your body depends on. Now consider this. Even inside the space station, gravity is still pulling everything downward. But because everything is falling together, you cannot feel it. And this is the key idea. Weight is not caused by gravity alone. It is caused by resistance. The ground pushing back against you. Remove that resistance, and weight disappears, even if gravity remains. This is why astronauts float. Not because gravity is gone, but because nothing is pushing back. Now think about how powerful this misunderstanding is. A simple visual illusion has shaped how millions of people think about space. We see floating and we assume absence. But the reality is more complex and more interesting. The real misunderstanding is simple. It is not about gravity disappearing. It is about motion. Everything in orbit is falling at the same time. And that creates the illusion of weightlessness. So the truth is clear. Gravity exists in space. Astronauts float because they are falling. Orbit is constant motion. And what we see is not the absence of gravity, but perfect balance. You were told there is no gravity in space, but that was never true. Gravity is everywhere, always active, always shaping motion. And understanding that changes everything, because sometimes the biggest misconceptions come from what looks obvious, and the most powerful truths come from what we finally understand.